Hello and welcome to the Clashing of Steel. So today's topic is Barbarian Consumables. Most of the sword, folks and cavalry share the same consumables. There isn't much of a difference. The differences are with the archers and with the war dog handlers. I'm going to start with the most shared consumables, which are between the swordsman, folksman and the cavalry. So the first consumable is Burnished Heads, which reduces the opponent's melee attack for 10 seconds by 14%. It affects any opponents around your unit in 20 meter radius. Personally, I don't think this skill is that much of a difference maker, simply because it only lasts for 10 seconds. And usually when you're engaging someone, the fight is gonna last a lot longer. The melee attack reduction and its duration, well, it would be interesting if it would last 30 seconds. It could be considered a viable consumable. But because of its small debuff and short duration, it isn't worth it. For the second consumable, we have the Dirt Pouches. These are somewhat similar. They also last for 10 seconds, have a 10 meter radius around your unit, and lower the opponent's defense by 14%. Personally, out of the first two skills, I see this as a bit more valuable, because it gives you an edge to do more damage. But because it only lasts for 10 seconds, I still would not suggest this consumable. For the next consumable we have the Feast, which is probably a better one out of these all three. It gives you melee defense, melee weapon damage and weapon penetration damage. In overall it gives you a buff that lasts for the whole game instead of the 10-second duration weakness for the opponent in whatever type. I usually prefer this consumable. It gives me weapon damage and weapon penetration damage with a little melee defense. I don't see much use in the Barbarian consumables that you need to activate. In the end they are weaker than the passive consumable. It will give you a small boost for a short duration, but to use it properly in that small window of time, in that small nick of time, is rather hard. There are moments when they could work, but usually at those moments the opponent is already overwhelmed, outnumbered and flanked from different sides. So next we have the Intoxicate. This is probably one of the better consumables under the Barbarians that you need to activate. Although it lasts for 10 seconds, it gives you 75% melee attack. It will also deal a small amount of damage for your unit for the 10 seconds it is active. Around 4 to 8 damage per second. To all troops in the unit you have it active on. Compared to other consumables you need to activate, the Intoxicate will give you enough melee attack for those 10 seconds to make even a bit of difference. I have actually used Intoxicate on flanking maneuvers. It can give you a bit of extra boost, but I would still personally consider some type of a passive consumable that I can use. Okay, so next we have the Spar. It gives you extra impact damage and melee attack with some shield armor. I personally prefer the Feast, but this one can work out as well. Although for the Folksman, the shield armor stat isn't, well, anything practically. They don't have shields and, well, don't rely on the Spar, so I would use it with probably Sword Infantry. I'm gonna bring the Swear Oath next to this one. The both are kinda similar. They both give you a bit of impact damage, they give you melee attack, but they differ only with movement speed and shield armor. So Swear Oath would technically be better for the Folksman, and the Spar would kinda be fixed like for the Sword Infantry. Another great thing is that the Folksman will get movement speed from this consumable as well, passively, for the whole game. But if you don't know which to pick, you can always go for the Feast. So these were mostly the Infantry and the Cavalry skills. Cavalry also has the tribute to Epona or Epona. It gives you movement speed, acceleration and impact damage. I usually use it with Arminius just to get the most out of my cavalry, to be more mobile, more agile, faster than most other units. But you can also pick the Feast or Spar or whatever you feel fit. For Arminius, this probably gives you that extra speed if you need it. But with Vercingetorix, it's probably better to take Oath or Spar or something like that. So next we have the War Dogs. They don't have both the Oath and the Feast. Although they do have Spar, they have two totally different consumables. The Incentives and the Dog Whistle. I personally prefer the Dog Whistle, but the Incentives give a bit more stats if you want your dogs to be a bit more offensive. The whistle gives me movement speed at the moments I really need it, like when I'm sending them after the archers. The archers might fire the barrage, so the dogs will get there a bit faster. Although the incentives are good, the dogs are often used as a harassment weapon, and not that much as a resilient fighters. The dogs will be like harassing your opponents, they will go in, you will pull them back out. Not like the swordsmen who will most likely fight till the very end. And for the last, we have the archers. Of course they have many different ammo types, like the flaming arrow or the bodkin arrows, but I want to talk about the passives that the barbarian archers have. Arrow types can make a lot of difference, but there is so many choices and each type of arrows is gonna be good for something, so it's like a grey area. It's depending on what you face the most, or with what arrows you can make the most difference. So my focus right now is on the hunt and the sacrifice animals. I personally will go for the range, of course, and the movement speed. It seems very viable. The hunt can help me outrange my opponents, and movement speed can make a lot of difference. While sacrifice animals can give you that missile weapon damage and acceleration, it might help you as well, but I usually prefer to go for the range, and if I can get it passively, I usually stick with it. Although there are different arrow types you can choose instead of these passives. You can choose like armor piercing arrows or range increase arrows or so. I used to love light arrows which had the longest range, but at the high tiers they seem to be a lot weaker towards a lot of opponents. So if you feel that there are armor legionnaires annoying you, I'm guessing you can go for extra armor piercing damage and reduced range arrows. Or if you're afraid to lose range, you can go for passives or missile weapon damage arrows. With archers there are tough choices to make, but I'm guessing you can't go wrong with increased range passives. I covered most of it, so I hope this gave some insight over the Barbarian Consumables. There are consumables that I prefer, but some seem to be a bit weaker than the others. I'm sure they can pay off at some point, but usually the consumables you need to activate are somewhat weak, at least for the infantry. For the archers, well, they have their own thing, and my preferences can be different from what players may prefer. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe and thanks for watching.